Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you on today's webinar about PEFC Poland. My name is Hubert Inheiser. I'm a technical officer at PEFC International. And today we're going to talk about, as part of the public consultation process, about the Polish forest certification system. Our agenda will be not that crowded. I will have a short introduction about PEFC International for those who are not that familiar with the PEFC setup. And then after I hand it over to Krzysztof Jodlowski, who is here with us from PEFC Poland, to tell us a little bit more about the Polish forest certification system. And of course, as we usually do, we have at the end time for questions and answers. So let us start with this brief introduction. PEFC stands for Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification Systems. We are an alliance of independent national forest certification systems under the umbrella of PEFC International. All these national forest certification systems are based on PEFC's sustainability benchmark standards, or they are adopting our international standards. This is a voluntary mechanism promoting sustainable forest management through independent third-party certification. We are very proud to say that we are the world's largest forest certification system and provider of 3/4 of the world's certified sustainably managed timber. Here we can see our global coverage. Here, out of this 121 million European hectares, Poland stands with an impressive 7.1 million hectare certified. Now, the Polish system was submitted in May for assessment. The PEFC assessment will be carried out by an independent assessor. You can learn about them more on our website. As part of this assessment process, there's a 60 days international public consultation period. And this is also available on our website. We opened the public consultation just today. So the deadline for submitting your comments for any stakeholders, it's 25th of August. So it's just the end of the summer vacation here in Europe. Just we encourage everybody to take a look at the complete documentation of the Polish system and let us know if there's anything which should be considered during the assessment, because all the comments which we receive will be considered by the independent assessor during the assessment process, and of course it will be highlighted in the assessment report. And I think that was it from my side, and I'm happy to hand it over now to Krzysztof. I stop sharing my screen, and Krzysztof, please share your presentation and you can start. Thank you.
Thank you, Hubert. I try to share my screen. Hope it will work properly. Is it okay?
I can see it perfectly. I hope the others can see it as well.
Okay. My name is Krzysztof Jodlowski. I'm chairman of PEFC Poland, but I also work as a technical officer in our office. That's why you can hear my presentation and you see my presentation today. My scope of my presentation. Initially, I would like to say a few words about the PEFC in Poland. Then I'd like to explain a forest context, which is very important in our case, and briefly describe a revision process. The last point of my presentation is question and answers, which you are encouraged to ask us. Brief history of PEFC in Poland. Poland became a member of PEFC Council in 2003. That time it was the system was administered by Association of Foresters and Wood Technologists. In 2008, our standards, our system was recognized for the first time by PEFC International. In 2009, the membership, PEFC membership was transferred from the association to a Forest Research Institute. So since that year, this year, PEFC system is administered by our institute. In 2010, first FM certificate was given to Regional Directorate of State Forests in Radom. In 2015, we gained an endorsement. It was in December, and now we are undergoing a second revision process. Briefly, short statistical information on PEFC in Poland. Certified forest area is 7.15. It's a bit less than total forest area administered by state forests, but you should all keep in mind that some forest land which is under the administration of state forest is not forested. In total, we've got 22 certificates, forest certificates, but we should keep in mind that individual certificates claim only for 15,000 hectares. So it is less than 1%. So one can say that FM certification in Poland is mainly group certification. In terms of chain of custody, we've got 250, approximately 2,250 certificates. The number is increasing slowly. The annual rate is 5 to 10 certificates. Coming to more statistical information about Poland. Majority of Polish forests are located on the outskirts of Poland and are located on the northern, western and southern part of Poland. Center of Poland has a low forest cover and is dominated by farmlands. We should remember that during the half a century, more than half a century, our forest cover increased from 21% to almost 30%. It means in hectares, 1.5 million hectares. Currently, the forest cover of Poland is a bit over 9 million. Ownership structures. It's a bit unique because almost 77% of our forests are administered by state forest. The rest of it belong to a different ownership. Individual private forest claim for 19%. Other forest ownerships are national parks, other public forests owned by communes. A few words about the state forests, because state forests are key holders in our certification system. As I mentioned, the area exceeds 7.5 and under certification is 7.15. State forest holding has three-level structure. On the top, we've got a General Directorate of State Forest. The middle level is Regional Directorate, and on the bottom, we've got a forest district. At this moment, as of last of December 2021, we've got 430 districts. Share of private forest in forest area of province. In Poland, you can see on the map on the left, majority of private forests are located in the central and western part of Poland. The situation is a result of some historical changes and social political changes which occurred after the last World War. We've got in Poland over 1 million private forest owners, and private forests are very fragmented. Average size of private forests is at the level of 1.2 hectares. Forest function. Normally we used to say about three major, the most important functions: natural, social, and production. On the chart on the left, you can see how does it look in practice. We've got almost 45% of forest with a dominant economic function, and we've got almost 22 with water protection function. Others are soil protective, valuable from the point of view of nature, very important forest being a buffering zone around the town and cities. We should keep in mind also that almost 20% of country area is within Nature 2000, and share of area in terms of state forest, it is almost 40%. Such a part of state forest is in Nature 2000. Looking at the age structure, the average age of in state forest is 61 years, in private forest 53. This information is coming from National Forest Inventory. In the middle of this chart, you can see how important was forestation of huge abandoned farmlands after the Second World War, and what kind of implication we've got right now with in forest management. Our forests are still dominated by coniferous species. It's about 70% of forest area. Pine occupies almost 59% in all forms of ownership. In details, it means almost 61% in state forest and 55% in private forest. According to a National Forest Inventory, which started in 2005, we observe increase in share of broadleaf species by approximately 2%, and decrease in share of coniferous species, including pine by 1.8 and spruce by 1.1. And we observe also a slight increase in share of fir and other coniferous species. This related to replacing a spruce stands, especially in mountainous region, with fir. Timber harvesting in 2021, the total volume of harvested timber in Poland was a bit over 42 million cubic meters, of which state forest harvested nearly 40 million cubic meters. According to information from in National Forest Inventory and other sources, The intensity of use, I mean how much of annual increment we consume, this value is 84%. It should be mentioned that majority of timber is harvested by forestry contractors. This is for state forest. In private forest, sometimes timber is harvested by contractors, but in terms of very small forest parcel, forest owners harvest timber by themselves. And it's a rule that the timber is sold on a roadside. So the forestry contractors are responsible for extracting timber from the stand to the nearest forest road. Forest management plan in Poland is based on regulation contained in. And here you see the list of very important acts which create the base for forest management. I mean the Constitution of the Republic of Poland and Polish legal acts such as Act on Forest, the Polish Forest Policy, Act on Protection of Rural and Forest Grounds, Act on Nature Protection, and of course all international conventions ratified by Poland, such as Ramsar Convention, Paris, Washington, Bonn, Rio de Janeiro, Bern, ESPO and Aarhus Convention, and of course ILO core documents. Very important document for forest management in Poland, and this document is a base for management plans, is a forest management plans which is prepared for every forest district, for every forest compartments and sub-compartments. It contains a description and assessment of condition of the forest and the goals, objectives, and method of forest management. Such forest management plans are prepared mainly for 10 years. Revision process, general. We started the second revision on the General Assembly of PEFC Poland in December 2019. There were two main reasons for this decision. The publication of the updated versions of PEFC standards ST 1001, 1002, and 1003. And that's why it was necessary to adapt the national standards to keep them updated. And of course, the need for cyclic review updating of the Polish system. In addition, in February 2020, PEFC Council published 3 revised standards related to chain of custody certification, which in turn necessitated the update of procedure used by PEFC Poland, notification and licensing of PEFC trademarks. So in practice, this meant that PEFC almost all system documents in Poland needed to be revised. Briefly looking at a list of documents. On the left column, we've got a still valid system documents. PEFC PL 1001 standard setting requirements. What kind of changes were done done to this standard? Major, because the PEFC Council published new document in 2017, standard setting requirements. Next document, Polish documents, PEFC PL 1002, certification accreditation procedures. Not so many changes were necessary to implement, let's say minor. resulting mainly from changes in ISO standards and guides, and this document was consulted with the Polish Center for Accreditation. Next documents, PEFC PL 2003, Sustainable Forest Management Requirements. In this case, changes were major, comments and remarks from public consultation and publication of new standards, sustainable forest management requirements were main reason for revision. Group Forest Certification document number PEFC PL 1004. Major changes were results from publication of PEFC 2001 standard group forest certification requirements by PEFC Council. We have to say that documents related to chain of custody, I mean requirements for certification body operating certification against PEFC international chain of custody and chain of custody of forest-based product requirements. Those documents were translated into Polish and simply replaced all versions of these documents. A little bit different situation was with PEFC logo usage rules, because in the past in this area two documents existed, and now those documents are replaced by PEFC ST 2001 PEFC trademark rules requirements, and two technical documents concerning notification of certification body and issuing licenses of PEFC logo. In first case, changes were minor, resulting from updating scheme documents, and the new name was given to the standard, new code was given to the standard, just to make a numbering of our documents more clear. Issuing licenses for using of PEFC logo was name of code of the document was changed as well. Changes resulting from publication of 2020 standards. We made no changes to bylaws of PEFC Poland. How did it look in practice? Preparation review, we started the procedure in December 2019 till June 2021. We've been a little bit under the influence of COVID pandemic, and all a part of our activities simply were postponed. Our working group meetings were arranged between July 2021 and November 2021. Later on, we had a public consultation, which started at the end of November and ended in January at the end of January 2022. It was later on, after the public consultation, we got several working group meetings, and meetings were organized in February and March and April. In May, decision-making, we adopted the new documents and publication after that adoption. Coming to more details, the decision to start the review process of PEFC Poland's documentation and roadmap was taken by the General Assembly of PEFC Poland on 19th of December 2019. 1 year later, also at the General Assembly of PEFC Poland on 18th of December 2020, the revision process was officially launched. How the working group was established. First, we identified stakeholders relevant to the objectives and scope of the revision process. Of the Polish scheme, we distinguished 5 groups: forest owners, managers, forest wood-related industries, business, non-governmental organization, forest and ecology, authorities, public administration, local government, forest science. In our opinion, the main disadvantaged stakeholders was private forest owners, and key stakeholder, State Forest National Holding. On May 2021, we announced the recruitment for a working group. The announcement included, as I mentioned in the beginning, all the standard setting procedures were based on the PEFC ST 1001 standard. This announcement included information about the objective, scope, and steps of the standard setting process, information about the opportunities for stakeholders to participate in the process, invitation to stakeholders to nominate their representatives to the working group. Invited stakeholders were also encouraged to make comments on the existing forest management standards. We received 50 applications in this. We received 50 applications for a working group. It included 23 persons from state forest and 13% from timber industry. Taking into account communication difficulties possible only during online meetings, PEFC Poland decided to select 12 persons from this group. And the first stage of group's work was to assess and discuss the functioning of PEFC document on forest management. In addition, comments and proposals for changes by users of the system were discussing details. The working group held 4 meetings. At the last meeting on 8th of November 2021, a preliminary draft of forest management standard was agreed to be sent for public consultation. The decision was taken by online vote of all group members. Duration of public consultation, as I mentioned, they started at the end of November and lasted almost the end of January 2022. The start and duration of consultation was announced on the website of PEFC Poland and website of State Forest and by mail. The public consultation brought us 350 comments and remarks. All of them were discussed during 5 meetings of working group. At the last meeting on 27th of April 2022, the final version of draft was agreed to be recommended to a PEFC Poland Council. The draft was adopted by online voting of all members of the working group. Perhaps you are a bit surprised with the number of comments we received from public consultation. Here you are a kind of sample of our standards. In the criterion 2, for example, maintenance of health and vitality of forest ecosystem, we've got requirement 4.2.2, forest health and vitality shall be monitored periodically, especially as regards the main biotic, abiotic, and anthropogenic factors that may adversely affect them. And each requirement is associated by a number of indicators, depending on the subject of the requirements. The number of indicators can be 1, 2, 3, or even more. Here you've got examples of such indicators. They have a form of questions, and the main goal of indicators was to give a tool for auditors to overview the requirement and have a chance to incorporate them in a checklist and use it during the audits. On 10th of May 2022, PEFC Poland Council formally adopted the final version of forest management standards through online votes. 2 standards related to SFM standards were adopted. I should add that the rest of technical documents were approved by a board of PEFC Poland a bit earlier. Revision process, what's new? We've got quite a lot of changes in sustainable forest management requirements. We've got new definitions. Ecologically important forest areas, integrated pest management, non-forest ecosystem, employee procedure. These 2 definitions were added during the public consultation to make the document more clear for the users. Definitions related to the audit process were also added, like audit evidence and audit criteria. We know that such definitions are implemented in ISO standards, but our intention was to keep them in one document and to make life easier for auditors and certified entity. What is more important things? We have a statement that afforestation of ecologically important non-forest ecosystem, for example, grassland, is prohibited. We observe that sometimes it's happened in the past that the grassland in the middle of the forest or grassland neighboring to the forest and being a part of state forest land were sometimes afforested. The standard also introduced stricter requirements for conversion of forests to the other land use categories and conversion of degraded forest into plantations. This is also obligation to apply integrated pest management. It means that the forest owner manager, which is who has a problem with outbreaks, has to look for a best applicable technique to overcome it, and this applied means should be friendly to the environment. Prohibition of using pesticides such as fluorinated hydrocarbons, and as a kind of guidelines, we promote using a network of skid trails, strip roads, and use technical measures to reduce the impact of machinery on the ground. It could be done in different ways, like using semi-trucks, like using white tires, or putting treetops and branches on the strip road. And more changes in sustainable forest management standard. We prefer a natural process in forest renewal with reforestation. We promote diversity, but we also have to keep in mind that natural single species stands exist in practice, like pine stands or beech stands in the southern part of Poland. We put a lot of emphasis on a legal aspect of forest management, as I mentioned earlier, national and international law, ILO Convention, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And stress is also put on transparent contracting system for forestry works. State forests are obliged to follow a public procurement law, and strict and clear procedure should be established in each forest district to select forestry contractors for forest operation. Another important issue is ensuring equal opportunity, non-discrimination, and safe working environments. We add also Annex 2 to the standards, which describing harvesting and logging requirements, which is a kind of guideline for forestry contractors. Guidelines describing minimal requirements for this. Group forest certifications changes were very significant. Simply, the volume of a new document is double comparing to the previous one. New definitions have been introduced: group management plan, group management system. The requirements for group entity, a group member, have been greatly expanded, made more specific. The group organization shall develop a group management plan and prepare following that system how to implement this plan in practice. And performance evaluation, there shall be 3 types of evaluation in group. Self-certification, I mean internal monitoring program, annual internal audit program, annual management overview. And we put a lot of stress on improvements, how to deal with non-conformities and corrective actions, and of course, continuous improvement, which is very typical for ISO approach to management, certification of management systems. Notification procedures have been changed only slightly, and changes resulted from changes in ISO standards, ISO 17021 and ISO 17065, and of course GDPR also is very important. It has a form of mandatory annex in notification contracts. Issuing licenses for use of PEFC trademarks with introduction of new PEFC standards, PEFC 2020, we have no license fees in Poland. Data management procedure was a little bit improved. License agreements, license contracts are now mandatory. Up to this revision, license agreements, license contracts were not mandatory, but in this case, we have to take care more about the PEFC trademarks. That's why each certified organization has to sign a license agreement, license contract. And that's why different license agreements templates were prepared for this purpose. And GDPR, like in the case of notification. Now it's time, I think, for question and answers. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Christoph, for this very detailed and excellently structured presentation. I think we can now ask the floor for questions.
Can I stop sharing?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. And I don't see any yet, but I was noting for myself two issues which I would be happy to hear more about. I think it was very interesting when you mentioned this 89% intensivity of the way you harvest, and I just wanted to make sure that these are calculated on gross amounts, right? It's not net, it's gross amount. Okay. And the other one is, which is something often we hear in the system development, there's sometimes creating a challenge, these conversions, and you highlighted that you have more stricter requirements than in the 1003. If you could tell a little bit more about that, that would be great.
Okay, Hubert. Coming to your first question, this 84% of intensity, it means that we consume 84% of our annual increment, and this situation is for the last 5 years. In the previous years and decades, if I correctly remember, this level was much lower, and it was 55, 60, 65%. Now, I think it is related to our age classes. So we've got a more, our stands are getting older, and we harvest them more intensively. The increment in young stands, very young stands, is not so huge as in the stands at the age of 70 or 80 years. Your second question, we decided to prohibit to a forest and non-forest ecosystem, but also as we are talking about the conversions, we follow the indications given in PEFC international standard. And simply I compare the previous version, previous requirements concerning conversion of forest, degraded forest, and conversion of forest into plantations. And I observed that several additional requirements were added. So it's mainly resulted from changes in international standards, but we add also some slight comments and some slight indicators to that.
Okay, so it's basically the increase of the stricter requirements is basically following the 1003.
Yes.
All right, excellent.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for these clarifications, Christoph. I see that there's no questions from the floor. While I need to tell again that thank you so much for preparing this very detailed presentation and for being with us here today. I think it was very clear for everybody who attended and watched this webinar. Again, I thank you very much for your time. And with this, I close the webinar, and I wish everybody a nice rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. The same to you. Bye-bye, Hubert.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.